The Nuggets have played okay defense at times. They've played good defense for small stretches, and they haven't really jumped on any team, and all of that changed on Tuesday night. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast network, your team every day. Thanks for making this your first listen. We appreciate you guys joining us on whatever platform that you're listening, whether you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of the cool podcast apps out there. I use Pocket Casts or on YouTube. Best way for you to support the show. Just join our YouTube page, subscribe, hit notifications. You can join the chat with folks like Danny and Dominique. Alec is hanging out with us. Alec Wynn's hanging out with us today. What's up, Alec? On is in here, and Dominique, all sorts of cool folks hanging out with us in a Wednesday after the Nuggets decided to go ahead and be the team that struck first. The Denver Nuggets get the win over the Memphis Grizzlies on Tuesday night. They take this one with a kind of shockingly low score of 105-91. First Munder of the year, I believe. And
is it the first Munder? It can't be the first Munder, can it?
Can it?
Can it? Can it be the first Munder? Let's find out.
The fact that you can't say for sure says something.
I know.
They get the win.
It is not. It's actually the third Munder of the year.
Third Munder of the year. They do so without Jamal Murray, who sat out with knee soreness, and without Michael Porter Jr. They start Christian Braun. Bruce Brown goes to point guard. Christian Braun moves into the starting unit. Zeke Naji plays. They absolutely dominate. They absolutely roll, and they play their best defensive game of the season. Adam, what was your initial takeaway from the Nuggets win over the Grizzlies?
The initial takeaway is the Nuggets, for the first time all year, showed us what we believed to be true but had no evidence of, which is that they are actually a great team. I mean, honestly, the Nuggets are playing to the level of their competition this year, playing with fire in every game, and sometimes they get burned and lose by 20 points to mediocre teams, but most of the time they eke out wins. If it's against a good team, they eke it out. If it's against a bad team, they eke it out. This was the first game, in my opinion, the first game of the year from opening tip till final buzzer, where they looked like a team that wanted to see just how good they were, wanted to show just how good they were, and dominated. And Memphis, a good team, they hung around. They wouldn't just die when they got down 20 points repeatedly. But Denver had an answer for it every single time, and this was the game that you could finally point to and say, yep, they are true contenders. That's a team that looked like an actual contender that can play playoff defense at the NBA level.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Is like Malone's been saying over and over again. He's like, I know they can do it. I know, like, we've seen it. They can do it, but they have to choose to commit to do it. We have to do it to actually do the thing. We have to put the effort forth. To me, honestly, it shows the importance of the first 5 minutes of the basketball game. Now, teams are going to make a run in the NBA. Like, that's going to happen. Like, teams are always going to make a run. But the Nuggets came out and they had so much intensity and they had so much attack. They were all over the Grizzlies on both ends of the floor. They were forcing all the things that the Nuggets have been defensively this season, where they're like back on their heels and trying to match up. That's what the Grizzlies were having to do. The Nuggets were getting stops. They were playing physical. They were making plays. They were blocking shots. And they were getting down quickly into the other end, attacking constantly. It was like defense, get out, run. And that combination was really impressive.
It's funny, though. I kind of disagree with you in one way. The Nuggets have had great first 6 minute stretches this year.
No, see. Okay, they can have had great 6 minute stretches offensively, but they always have felt like, okay, yeah, like they didn't play great and their defense has been bad, but like they're up. It's not about them winning.
You're right that they've had a lot of those as well, but they've had games where they got off to like 15-4 starts. Like, it's actually happened for this team, especially early on in the year. Less so over the last 15-ish games, but early on in the year they were doing this, where they would get off to like just great two-way starts, and then it would die down upon first substitutions and upon the bench, and it would collapse. So the the intensity level was higher in this one than ever before, but because the competition level was higher than in any game before. I mean, this was probably also the toughest team that they faced. But nonetheless, it was a sustained effort. It didn't die down at any point in this game, where we've seen ebbs and flows and good quarters and even good halves. But this was the first one. And honestly, Matt, heading into halftime, it was 15 points. And I was thinking, like, that's just a big enough lead that the Nuggets might come out of the third on their heels and just not be intense about it. And they didn't. They actually, Memphis gave them a big punch right to start that quarter, and Denver immediately responded with defensive plays that led to transition. So to me, this is the first game that they played 48 minutes. I don't think they had a bad stretch in this game more than like 2 or 3 minutes here or there.
Yeah, they really responded every time that they started to make a run, and really got to be dicey with, you kind of pointed this out. Talk about the timeout thing, because there was a stretch where the Grizzlies made a run and Malone chose not to call a timeout.
Yeah, it was third quarter. And like I said, Nuggets up 15. You go away from a first quarter where you're a little hot, you're feeling it. You take the break, and then Denver in that spot has just come out so many times. They've come out flat. And I don't think they came out flat. I will say this. The unit that they played tonight with Bruce Brown at point guard and Christian Braun at small forward, when it got into a half-court game, I thought it got clunky. They did a good job of letting defense turn into offense, running and creating mismatches in transition and then scoring. But when it had to walk the ball up, the possessions were ugly. And I thought that third quarter, there was a lot of the offense was stuck in the mud in the half court. Memphis makes a little run and pushes it to single digits. And Malone, I thought, and I asked him after the game, I thought for sure he was calling a timeout there, a rage timeout, like a fury timeout. And it was only maybe 2 minutes into the quarter. And instead he didn't. I think Jokic has a pass in that sequence. Was it the through the legs pass? It might have been the through the legs pass, but I don't remember if it was that one or not. Then he has the 3-pointer, and then they have a steal where he throws it to Christian Braun, and Christian Braun dunks it. 3 plays in a row where Denver pushed it right back up. I think they pushed it to 14, but it was pushing it back up to where it completely negated the run that Memphis had made. And after the game, I don't know how you felt. I didn't feel like Malone was saying, I'm trying something new, or like I'm trying to be calmer, or, this or that. He was more like they have to figure it out. Maybe this is semantics. I would have preferred if Malone said, like, hey, I need to be calm in those moments so the team can, and trust that the team can figure them out. But I didn't feel like that was his message when I asked him that.
No, because he's not going to let go of that kind of control. Like he's just not. So,
and that's why I'm not too encouraged by it. That's why I was asking, like, hey, are you turning a new leaf? Like, you need to be this. And I think he was like, no, I'm
not turning a new leaf. That's not a thing. Yeah, basically I felt like they jumped on him early. They were in pure attack mode. The bench hit some shots. Zeke played extremely well in the first 6 minute stint. They played the first half, got all sorts of rebounds, drew fouls, which were interesting. And then
I can't believe, man, I love Brandon Clark, but jumping on a Zeke Naji fadeaway pump fake is like, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. That goes in the category of fouls that I don't think should be called, because you have to have some reasonable chance of hitting it. And it always drives me insane when any player, like, if I'm just like, yeah, but they're not, like, that player's never hitting that shot, like, ever. Like, why? That should not, there's no chance that thing's going in. I thought so. Anyway, the bench played well enough to get a +1 in the second quarter. Like, the second quarter, first 4 minutes before Jokic came back in was a +1. And then in the third quarter, they kind of have the lull, and it starts to get a little dicey, and they get to single digits, and then Joker just, like, bam, 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 5 plays in a row, like you mentioned. And the 3 really was, I was like, okay, that's probably it. Like, if he's gonna be hitting threes tonight, there is nothing you're gonna be able to do. Another game that kind of shows, like, we talk about this all the time. The numbers that Jokic puts up does not illustrate the dominance. It just doesn't. I find the numbers less correlated with Jokic's level of dominance than with any other player in the league. Right? Like, he goes 13, 13, 13. Which is a great line for most players. But for him, it's really kind of like okay, interesting night. But he was dominant. Like, there was nothing that the Grizzlies could do. And Steven Adams, it's really weird. Steven Adams, I think, is such a great defender, and he's been such a good pro in this league. And there's just, like, he is nothing for Jokic. He is, like, he's worse than Jokic than even the average good defenders. are.
It's because
And
he's not athletic. I mean, he does give him a hard time on the boards, and that like Jokic has to work for. I know he had 13 rebounds, but Jokic is like uncomfortable on the boards against him, but he doesn't jump to block shots. And I think that means Jokic knows he can just shoot his little touch shots over him.
Somebody asked for the stat check, so I want to go ahead and confirm it. There were 21 plays where Christian Braun was matched up on John Morant last night. There were 12 plays where it was called a usage matchup, where either it's like a shot, turnover, or pass for a shot, right? Of those possessions, of the 12 usage matchups, John Morant scored 9 points on the 12 matchups that he had versus Christian Braun.
Crazy.
So Christian Braun held him extremely in check, did a great job. Malone, called him out after the game. He got DPOG along with Jeff for taking the 2 charges. Christian was phenomenal. We can talk a little bit about that in the second segment about whether we think that that's sustainable or not. But I mean, I think Christian Braun was one of the real stories of the game.
To me, it was, I mean, as big of a story as anyone. And the block he had, I mean, some of this is the numbers you say. I mean, Ja's a good player. He joked after the game, I thought I did a good job on him. And I looked at the stat sheet and he had 35 points. Like sometimes that happens against good players. But again, you mentioned this with Jokic. It's true of all players. Jokic 13, 13, and 13, a good stat line, but you would know, did he dominate? Yes, he dominated this game. John Morant, 35 points. Did he dominate this game? No, he did not. And I think that's, it wasn't just Christian. The whole team they threw a lot of bodies at him. They did a lot of things. But Christian Braun forced him into turnovers. I could think of the one where Ja jumps and passes sideways and it just gets picked off. And then, of course, the block shot off the backboard late in the game, that was a big possession. It was almost like a game sealer. So I thought he was phenomenal defensively against Ja. And I'm curious, as we learn, like Christian Braun has some things about him defensively that are great. And I think there's still some gaps in him. I got to go back and watch this one to figure out why he was so good against Ja specifically. If it's like, I'm curious if it's like an archetype of a player that he is good against. Maybe not. Maybe it was just a good game from him.
I thought the backline defense was really good.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it because like there was a possession where in the first half where they ran pick and roll, maybe a second half where they ran pick and roll on the side, on the right side. Joker plays at the level, he splits it, and then Jeff comes over and draws a charge on him, right? Like they layered their defense, I thought, really well versus Ja, in part because without Bane, the Grizzlies did not have any shooting. Like they did not have any shooting whatsoever. I'm trying to debate how much this weighs in. That was a well below par performance for Memphis, which was really interesting. Like Memphis shot terribly from all facets, couldn't defend. Like the Nuggets absolutely just whipped them, right? But it was also like it was a bizarre. The whistle was really in Denver's favor in that game. They got a really good whistle last night. They were the aggressor, but they also got a really good whistle on top of it.
I think those things are always connected. And this is why I don't like to complain when Denver doesn't have the good whistle against teams that always get fouls, like Golden State, for example. Last night, Denver had a different approach to the game, and they got a good whistle even with that. But I'm telling you, you're going to get a better whistle more often than not when you are the team that punches first and hardest. And Denver did that all night long.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and we're going to test drive some takes and see whether or not they're prisoner of the moment.
You're so down, Matt. Why are you so down today?
I'm exhausted. 8 o'clock starts are rough. I'm exhausted.
Okay.
So we'll come back. We'll talk about whether or not these takes are prisoner of the moment or not. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I need to tell you about BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedon and get on your way to being your best self. So life is a rough time for a lot of people. The holidays are tough just for a number of reasons, and a lot of people are going through it, and life doesn't really come with a user manual. So when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Navigating any of life's challenges can make you feel unsure, whether it's a career change, new relationship, becoming a parent. Therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient and accessible anywhere. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists, available 100% online. Plus, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, match with the therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily time. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% on your first month at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. We're going to test drive some takes, but I guess first I got to deal with this from Walter, who watches the show, yet wants me to get the business over Zeke Naji. Do you want to give me the business over Zeke Naji?
I mean, I thought he had a good game defensively. I don't know that it was like a great game for him. I don't know if he like proved anything to Michael Malone. I'm glad that Michael Malone tried him out. They went relatively small, pretty small compared to what we've seen in the past. And I thought it was a pretty malleable lineup. And I think Zeke Naji does a lot of things defensively that are impactful. And then offensively, I didn't, he drew those couple fouls early, but I don't think he really did anything that stood out. I mean, Zeke Naji, to me, this was like a B game. It was almost more of an unremarkable game to me than anything. He did draw some fouls and he hit he made some plays in the first stint that were big.
Yeah, the first 6 minutes were really good. Had the tap out on the offensive rebound on his own missed free throw. That was big.
Man, that was a huge play.
Yep, that was a really big play.
This is what the second unit. It's funny because I'm trying to figure out why the second unit wasn't a disaster, because Bones didn't play. I thought Bones had a bad game. Like he was missing a bunch of stuff at the rim, missing his threes. But it was plays like that. That second unit just made a bunch of plays like that kept them alive, because it was not like good process. I don't think you felt good about, something good's coming here. But there just was Bruce Brown rebound, Christian Braun rebound, Zeke Naji tap out, Jeff Green transition dunk. It was just like hustle plays. And they got enough of them that it kept it even.
Yeah, I mean, if you play like that, then that's how then things will go well, right? Like that's kind of the thing. Let's start with a couple of takes and see whether we think that these are prisoner of the moment or not. The first one, you don't really need all-stars around Nikola Jokic. You just need 4 good defenders.
I'm pretty adamant about this one. I do not think that is the right takeaway. Whenever you get a completely different lineup, we've seen this with Denver. Guys are out on the other team like, oh, no, there's no Damian Lillard tonight. Like, oh, crap. That means Denver's going to lose because they're going to play. It is not even always about playing down. It's just sometimes like, well, we don't know what this team is anymore. How do you scout a team that you've never seen? And when you take the pieces out, it's different. I think there was some of that today with Denver, where they went from this terrible defensive team with Murray and, whoever else, to now, it's a defensive-minded team and it's going to be, evenly spread out. I do think there's some takeaways from that. The defense, putting all those defenders around Nikola and then them having the best defensive game of the season. Yeah, I do think there's something to that. But I think that if you ran this lineup 10 games in a row, the back half of those games would probably look a lot different than the front half, as teams were like, okay, here's what they can't do. Let's force them into that.
I think you noted that in the second quarter, we were sitting there at the arena, and you noted that like the offense looked really bad in that second quarter stretch. Like they went a long period without scoring. And this is kind of like the way I think of it is without Jamal and MPJ, with Bruce, KCP, and Aaron, they were able to just fly up and down the court. Right. Yeah. So they get out in transition and they get a stop. Joker throws the outlet, attack. And like Joker does enough, inside creation on in the half court. But then as the game goes on, that gets tougher. The team makes adjustments. They settle down. And maybe that's where you need some more of the consistency. So what it kind of shows is the Nuggets have this in their bag. They have a weapon they can go to, which is deploying these defenders and running the ball. But you have to have it in certain circumstances, and you have to know when to use it and when not to. It has to be like a selective deployment, which is going to be tough because most of the time guys like set rotations, right? Guys prefer to have steady rotations and know when they're going to be playing. But that to me was kind of the takeaway. And if you want to try to adapt it, it really just means that like Jamal's got to get the ball and get up the floor. And that's, a challenge, I think, from where he's at physically and conditioning and all these kind of things. So
but
like for him,
I also think it's something about like there just was fewer variables in this one. Defensively, I mean, I think one of the lessons can be, and this is true of all players, even Jokic had this approach. It seemed like it just wasn't focused at all on his offense. It was just defend, and the offense is going to happen. Like, we're just going to get enough out of it. And I wonder if there's a little bit of that with Jamal too. Just, hey, if you can defend at that level, don't worry about the offense. You guys are going to outscore the other teams every single time. If the bar for winning is a 97 offense, what was it? Nope, 90 offensive rating, because they had a 90 defensive rating, meaning they held Memphis to a 90 offensive rating. If that's the bar, you'll do that every time, even on bad games.
Yeah. Let's do Christian Braun starting. Is Christian Braun starting the key to unlocking something important with the Denver Nuggets?
I mean, in Michael Porter's absence, I think yes. I mean, I've been on this one for a while. I don't think this is proof. I do think it's evidence of it. But look, his length matters. His defensive ability matters. And he's just a low-maintenance player that doesn't need anything. So to me, this is, of all of the ones we're going to do, this is the one I feel the most confident in.
Would they still be better with MPJ?
I think so. I mean, again, over time, you're going to figure things out. I do think, though, that those guys can be a little bit more interchangeable. And I wouldn't mind seeing MPJ, when you talk about a second unit, I wouldn't mind MPJ starting, but you're switching and you're getting to that lineup, 5 minutes into the game, and that becomes your rotation. So I think you still start Michael Porter, but Christian Braun, to me, is just the best fit outside of him to be in that spot. And I think we'll see more and more minutes with it. Or I hope
Nuggets now.
I don't know if I think
Nuggets now 9-0, and Christian Braun plays more than 20 minutes. Absolutely nothing wrong with taking everything away from that stat. It's just that simple. Play Christian Braun 20 minutes, and you know that they're going to win the game. I think one of the challenges that they're going to have is getting enough minutes for everybody, right? Because there's a lot of comments in here, like Walter's in here. CB's got to play more. CB playing is important. All these type of things. Okay, at full strength, your rotation is Joker, Jamal, MPJ, KCP, Aaron Gordon.
Those guys are locks, yeah.
Bruce Brown.
Yeah.
Who's
the next lock? Well, hold on. Who's the next lock? You have Bruce Brown. Who's the next lock for you?
Bones, because of backup point guard. You need a primary ball handler.
Here's another take. Okay, we'll get to more takes here going on, but keep going. Then who's the next lock? Jeff Green or Christian Braun or DeAndre Jordan?
Yeah, so this is where it gets into in the playoffs. Do you feel like are they going to feel confident enough in Christian to play him over Jeff Green, right?
Jeff Green was great last night. I mean, I think Jeff Green is one of the stories of last night. They closed with him, by the way, and he did great.
Yeah, he did. He did. People were very upset that they were closing with Jeff, and then it worked out. So, yeah, I think it gets tough for figuring out how to get Christian enough minutes with where the rotation is at. He's really good, especially when he's hitting shots. He's really good, right? But that's I think it is going to be, a little bit of a challenge to get him enough minutes, and that causes some interesting questions about the future.
To me, I think he is as close to a lock in that rotation, or should be, and probably will be eventually, as you're going to get outside of Bruce Brown. But to me, Jeff Green is next. Bones is the one that I think is a lock because, like you said, you're going to play him and you need to get through the stretch and this or that. But to me, he's the one that I would not be surprised if Malone went to Bruce Brown backup point guard minutes, because he was the backup point guard last night, and he's actually shown some inconsistent chops.
David wants to credit you. Adam called the CB thing early in the offseason. Props. You sure did. You absolutely called Christian Braun being a really important contributor. So good call by you. Jamal Murray not playing is what opened things up for the Nuggets, and that's why they had such a great performance. Prisoner of the moment or not?
I mean, it's definitely prisoner of the moment, but I do think there's lessons to be learned from it all. Like I said, the defensive emphasis, the getting the ball up the floor quickly, and just the energy. I think part of this is you can always tell when Murray has that pep in his step. It's just he brings more energy than anybody on the roster sometimes, but not all the time. And I think that was one of the things. So Murray, I don't think is an anchor on this team, but I do think there's something too. You got to bring that workman-like energy, every single game. Because if not, there's hungry guys that definitely will. Like Bruce Brown brings it. Who brings energy every single night? Aaron Gordon, Bruce Brown. I think those are like 1, 2. Christian Braun, just because by his nature.
Bones brings energy. He doesn't always bring competent play.
Bones does bring energy. That's a good point. He does bring energy.
Yep.
It might be those 4. And I think Jokic, honestly, he doesn't always, to say energy, he brings like professionalism, I think, every night. But he doesn't always have the like intensity. He had the eye of the Joker last night.
The Nuggets are the best team in the West. They took over the number 1 spot. You and I was joking with you last night. We had a show less than a week ago, which was what's wrong with the Denver Nuggets, and they're number 1 in the Western Conference. So the Nuggets are the best team in the West. Is that prisoner of the moment or not?
Yes, prisoner of the moment. I will say this. Memphis did not have Desmond Bane, and he's a big piece of this, as you noted earlier. Nuggets didn't have Michael Porter and Jamal Murray in ways that we're questioning, could they have pulled this off with those guys, which I think is a little silly. What this showed me is that the Nuggets can be the best team in the West. Not that they are. I mean, this was a great game, and I hope we get more and more of these type of games. We're joking over at DNVR. We always talk about December 15th as Yokmas. Eric, this is his theory, and I think he's right. You always have 2 seasons with the Nuggets, before Yokmas and after Yokmas. And here we are after December 15th. Maybe it's time. Maybe this is the real start of the season for the Nuggets.
Yeah, entirely possible. Entirely possible that this home stretch opens the door for them to really, establish themselves. And they've kind of been on that. Like there's been a lot of here's the thing. There's nothing you get from complaining about the schedule. You don't get Malone will do it as a message to the league, but the players don't get anything from it.
Hold on. Is it a message to the league?
I think so. What do you think it is?
I think it's a message to you and to me and to the media. Take it easy, guys. That's my opinion. I think it's a little bit of let me set the expectation here. This is going to be really hard. And I'm not saying it's like I'm being tongue in cheek here. I don't even think that's bad. Sometimes it's a good thing to get out in front of a story and say, hey, this is going to be tough.
I mostly mentioned it because when he talks about it from trying to point out exactly how ridiculous it was. And like the tone that I always pick up from him is very much like the league did this. Like this is an absolutely ridiculous schedule stretch that we were given. I think there's a little bit of that. I think that it's honestly more from the players because the players, I think when, if you ask them about it, if you really kind of press them, there has been a little bit of like, it's tough with the travel. Like it just is, and so I'm curious to see what the rest of the homestand looks like. How about this? The Nuggets were dominant last night because they played all the young guys.
I mean, no, I don't think there's anything to that. I mean, look, those guys brought energy, and I think that's important. And I do think you need to play young guys. I mean, Memphis I brought this up the other day. They played David Roddy, and he had a good game, by the way, a little homecoming for him. Shouts to David Roddy. But I do think there's something to young guys do bring something that old guys don't, and that is often energy. But I don't think you can say that's why they won.
Yeah, and like you said, Jeff played well. Joker played well. KCP played well. Bruce Brown.
Jeff brought energy last night, man. Like Jeff has this in him. I mean, he's a vet. You can complain about this, and I would complain about it. But honestly, when you're 35, you kind of have to do this. Jeff knew he was needed last night. Brought his A game.
I mean, that dunk. That dunk.
An all-timer, man.
Ridiculous. I have so much respect for Jeff Green. I love Jeff Green. I loved him as a prospect. I loved him in OKC. I loved him in Boston and Memphis, the Clipper. I've loved him everywhere. I love Jeff Green. Jeff Green's amazing.
But don't you think that he has like different gears? And last night he was like, all right, these guys are down. Gonna be a tough game. Like he was in sixth gear all night.
I want to go back to the Nuggets prove that they're the number 1 team in the West. Right now, I would say that they prove that right now they are.
Literally.
Yeah. like a lot of this is that Memphis had a strong home stretch versus bad teams that they just ran out the building, and that's how they built up this record. The Pelicans had a stretch where they were playing great basketball. They've slid. They've lost 4 in a row. The Suns are really banged up, and they're having a rough time staying healthy. Like they are piecing things together. And then really you see this across the league. Like the parity level right now is very high. And so the Nuggets have been the best team in the Western Conference, but they haven't been like a dominant best team in the Western Conference. But last night was really, especially for being a national TV game, for once they really put themselves on the map and were like, oh yeah, by the way, we need to consider the Nuggets as a serious contender again.
Look, Suns fans were so gracious when Denver was hobbled, so so I got to give them that same due respect.
Fair point. How about this one? The Nuggets prove that they can play elite defense.
Oh man, true. I'm gonna say true. Look, true. And it's not just because of last night. They've done this in little pockets, but this is why last night's game was so important, Matt. We had to see if it was at least possible. Now we can just be annoyed that they don't always do it, but at least we know it's possible. Where are you?
One more thing before we get a break.
Is it true?
Oh yeah, I think so. Look, we were talking before the season about how we thought this could be a top 10 defense, and then they come out, they're 28th, and look, my thing has been, and I could be very often wrong about a whole bunch of things all the time. My thing has been that the defensive stuff has been a lack of effort and engagement, especially from the starters. That the starters have not taken it on themselves to push themselves in the regular season, to get up into guys, to really like you mentioned, like all these great starts. Again, to me, I do not feel like they have jumped on teams defensively. Anybody like they jumped on Memphis last night. And I have said that I think that they can do that. They just haven't. And we've talked about like the reasons why. But last night they did. Like they made that decision collectively as a group. They found that energy, they found that vibe, and they punched first. And when you do that, good things are going to happen. And they're capable of a lot when they do that.
Yeah.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk more about the win over the Grizzlies as well as some other things when we come back on. I need to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. I had a 2-unit bet on the Memphis Grizzlies last night. Get the latest odds and trends for every profession, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. We've got it all at betonline.net. Sports podcasts, you can find those over at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Glad to have you guys with us. Even Donnie, who is a very Debbie Downer in the chat, even more than I am today. I'm gonna peel back the curtain a little bit. Adam, you had something you want to talk about in the third segment, and I don't remember what it was.
I think we were going to talk about Jokic's different man evolution.
That's right. Quote right here. So after the game, in a segment with TNT, which Adam just loved that segment with TNT. Adam did not.
I honestly did like it a lot.
After they got done with the Russian thing, yeah.
After they get done with the weird xenophobia stuff, but yeah, after that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a big deal of it, though.
Aside from the this is a quote they had about Joker had about wearing suits. He said, quote, "I just don't like how guys are dressing up for the games. Wearing a suit means business. It means I'm here to do my job."
I don't like how guys
what a change.
are.
Yeah. What a change from was years ago, where it would have been a hoodie, sweatpants, rolling in. Like, I'm trying to think of how often I've even seen him in jeans. Like,
I've never seen him in jeans. I can't
really
picture that.
Really hard to find jeans for Jokic. I imagine that would be a challenge. And to see this kind of your thoughts when you saw the quote.
I mean, I felt like it's meaningful. It is an inside look. And here's one thing I will say. Jokic, his nickname is Joker. And he gets that obviously because it's easy, to draw from Jokic to Joker, but also because of his playful personality early on in his career where everything was a joke. And we always would wonder, like, can this guy be serious? Like, can this guy be a champion and all these different things when you're that goofy? And I think some players are that and they never grow out of it. JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, these guys came in with that sort of that carefree attitude, and then that just stayed with them their whole lives, their entire career. I think Jokic has moved away from that. In fact, last night when Chuck asked him about the suit, he was trying to get a joke out of him. I think he was trying to get say something funny now. And Nikola's like, no, actually, this is a serious thing. And this has happened a lot over the last 2 years where Nikola has been led to his traditional, here's a joke for you, make a joke, do the laugh. And he's
funny guy.
He's not done it. So the jokester, the Joker part of Jokic, I feel like has kind of evolved away.
Yeah.
And fine, that's not a complaint in any way. And I feel like he has become a more serious person, and that thoughtful, hey, this is where I wear suits. I want to set a tone. I'm coming to work. I want to have that mentality. It just shows you that these things have run deeper with Yoke, and that there's this drive behind him that I think is undersold by him, but that is actually there.
I think it does definitely reflect his evolving approach to the NBA and to his play, right? Where I think for years he was searching for what was fun about the NBA, right? Because after a while, and after the buzz of that first year when you're making noise in 2018 and 2019, after that kind of fades, and you're like, okay, now it's December and we're doing this for another 5 months. Like that, I think causes a lot of it's a downer a little bit, and you have to evolve in your approach. And Joker does seem, you're right. It's a really good call on the fact that he does not take the bait nearly as often for funny haha comments anymore. Right. And he still gets lobbed them a lot. And I will only ask something silly if I have something very direct that I want to ask him about, if there's something in particular, the way I would honestly any star, just to be hey, here's a moment. But I also appreciate the fact that it is kind of reflective of what he talks about, where for him, one of the reasons that he deflects a lot of the credit is he does kind of, the underlying thing is that's my job. That's why I get paid, right? Some guys are like, that's why I get paid. And Joker is more just yeah, no, that's what I'm supposed to do. We're supposed to win the game. I'm supposed to play well.
Yeah.
That's my job. And I really appreciate in a league that I think oftentimes is the players are struggling for these type of things, reasons to play, and in the regular season. And so I think that's pretty cool. I will say though, he wore the green suit the other night, and I really green shirt. I just think leaning into it would be very good.
He looks good, by the way. He looks good, man. It's not just wearing suits. He's styling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean this sincerely. He's not just all right,
I know
the gray suit. He's
no, sorry. I just laugh because I'm yeah, you make $35 million a year. You can make yourself look nice. It's true.
He's putting his personality. He's putting his personality into a suit game. That's what I mean.
Oh, that makes sense. Best win of the season?
Oh no? Yeah. To me, it's no question. I just think it's the most real feeling win. You know what I mean? They earned it. They earned that one. Wasn't hot shooting. It was just they won it with defense. They had a 100 offensive rating last night, and they got a comfortable win.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, if you told me that the Nuggets had a 100 offensive rating versus Memphis, I would have been
they lost by 30.
Yeah. They did. I thought their transition defense was great last night. Christian's in particular was excellent. They did such a good job of not letting Ja get out in transition and attack them. He was never in the teeth of the defense. I've seen so many games where Ja is already behind your first two levels of defense before you even blink.
Yeah.
And that's what was crazy, is that was the weak point. And I asked Taylor Jenkins about it before the game, and he was talking about they wanted to run more and all these types of things. And he actually, I will say this, like Taylor Jenkins, pretty smart guy, because he was like, he's like, the Nuggets are probably gonna run at us more than people think tonight. He's like, their transition attack is really good, and that's not something that we've been excellent at. And so that was a good call by him. Any other takes from this game as we wrap up?
I don't think so. It was a great win. I hope it's a momentum builder, and I do think if I were to predict this, I have no insight on this. I kind of think Michael Porter and Jamal are back on Friday. And so it's kind of a funny one to carry such a big win like that, get 2 days off, and then work those two guys back into the rotation. And the reason I think that is a couple of different reasons. Murray, I think, was only going to take this game off and then come back Friday. Michael Porter being upgraded to doubtful last night, and then obviously not playing tells me he's close. And then 3, Christmas Day game, nobody's missing that. If guys are going to play in that one if they can. And are you going to come back on Christmas Day? Probably not. You probably want to get a game under your belt. So I think both of those guys are back Friday, and it'll feel in a lot of different ways like we just haven't seen it in so long. And it's good to be carrying this momentum into that. I think it'll be a big night. Friday night at Ball Arena should be pretty poppin'.
Casey says, Jamal, yes, I don't know about MPJ. So before the game yesterday, Malone kind of talked about this. Malone said that he is out, that MPJ was going to be out, but it definitely sounded like it was close. Like it sounded like
Friday.
It sounded like let me put it this way: if this was a playoff game, I think MPJ plays in that game.
I think if it was a playoff game, MPJ plays last week. But nonetheless, do you think he plays Friday?
I do.
I do too.
Yeah.
It's a perfect spot. Friday night at Ball Arena, day before the Christmas game, like 2 days off leading into it. You're going to get a full practice on Thursday where they get to kind of work in and get some run together. I would be shocked if those two don't play.
Yeah. That one should be a big game, should be a fun game. We'll see how it turns out. All right, back tomorrow with more talk about the Nuggets. We'll talk about where they're at in the Western Conference. We'll get into some other things. Probably need to have a Bones conversation as well. We'll talk about all that and more tomorrow on the show. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a great day. If you're traveling, be really safe. If you're listening to this and you're getting ready to do some traveling, especially if you're in Colorado, with how cold it's going to be, put a blanket in the car.
That's such good advice.
Put a blanket in the car, put some hand warmers in the car along with a flashlight. Do not risk it. This stuff is really dangerous. This cold snap is very dangerous. Stay safe out there. Have yourselves a great week. We'll see you guys again tomorrow.